Whoa, 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 stop typing. Put away the pitchforks. Put away the boiling tar. Put away the guillotine. We'll get to that later. Just hold on. Hold on to your horses. I know what the title says. I'm just trying to make sure that a certain individual is watching this video and that we get a pretty good sized audience for our jury, because we are putting secondaries on trial today because a certain individual has been pretty persistent in insisting this video get made, because he's been trying to call me and several other YouTubers out about this for some time, and we are going to get to that today. So hello good people of YouTube, Mountbatten here, and today, yes, we're talking about secondaries. Now, yesterday I was perusing through the comments after my ISP just decided not to work yet again, and we weren't able to stream yesterday. We're going to try again tonight. I don't know, I guess it's because of the heat wave, everyone's inside, so the internet's a bit overburdened in my area. I do kind of live in BFE, so there is that, but that's beside the point. So I'm perusing through the comments, and I see a comment from another individual called Robert. Now, Robert's been on a bit of a war-path here in the past couple of months. Now, he's been publicly commenting on my channel about this since I did the, I think the Graf Zeppelin video where we went down the middle on two brothers in convoys, and I had Lucians and a full secondary build on my Graf Zeppelin, and it did pretty well. And that's when he started his public comments about this subject. He'd been actually emailing me for quite some time about this subject, and of course sending me replays like many of you fellows do. So I'm going to read his most recent comment and put the chain up there from yesterday's video in order to give you guys an idea of what his argument is. And most of his comments are something along the same lines of this, with varying degrees of exclamation questions, question marks, and quotations. So this is what he posted in the comment section of yesterday's video, which was the top 5 non-premium overpowered ships. So he says, Sealord and the secondaries on turpits aren't OP. Secondaries are pretty much overpowered on every battleship. What skill does it take to fire your secondaries? None. Secondaries are like having a free ghost bonded lander that stays by your side for free for no effort on your part. You don't even have to be aware of what it's shooting at. I've seen games where they get over 400 secondary hits and have only earned 24 main gun hits. Secondaries are the most overpowered thing in the entire game, including subs and CVs. And yet Sealord and all of his sheep followers think they're cool. What a crock you are, Sealord. I guess when what's OP is to your favor, for no effort at all, it's all good and fair. That thought process defines a hypocrite to a T. Wake up, Sealord. 24 earned shell hits, and over 400 free secondary hits. Does that really sound fair? Answer, only if you're a hypocrite. Face the facts, Sealord. Thumbs down and middle finger up. Now, again, that's just his most recent comment. I'll throw some more of his comments about this subject up on the screen so you can get an idea of what his argument is as I go through this next section here. So, that's what his argument is, that secondaries are something that you basically get free damage for with little to no, well, in his words, no effort on your part, not even a little bit of effort, and that they are overpowered and the most broken thing in the game, more overpowered than the Nakmorph, more overpowered than the Gato. They are the real problem. They are what's causing this game to fail. Now, do keep in mind, I have replied to him in quite a few comment sections explaining my side of the argument, but I guess it's not good enough for him, so we're making this video today so that, well, it can be in a more public form, and I'm going to respond to his argument with my side of the argument, and look at this one with a bit more detail, and go into the detail about the secondary mechanics, the skills, and the models you have to take in order to get your secondaries out to, well, their best. And we're also going to take a look at some of the best secondary ships in the game and check out how they perform. So that's his argument, that secondaries are an effortless thing and they just get, well, free damage for you. Now, to understand where Robert is coming from, he is a pan-European destroyer main, and I've seen quite a few of his replays. He sent them in. He's a pretty solid pan-Euro DD player. He's got some pretty impressive games. He's sent me quite a few, and yeah, he seems for the most part to know how to pan-Euro DD. Pan-Euro DDs are a pretty nice line. They're more of a hybrid, well, more of a torpedo base. They have enough gunpowder to kind of, finish off low health targets if your torpedoes don't, like, if you get your target down like 5k damage, you can use the guns to finish them off, unless you're, of course, like the small, and then that thing's just absolutely cracked at that point. So we'll circle back around to that here in a bit. So, to understand where I'm coming from, as I'm sure most of you guys know, but if you don't know, you just click on this video because you think I'm crazy. I am a battleship main. Well, I started out this game as a battleship main. I've definitely leaned a lot more into the heavy cruiser side of things here in the past couple of years. I typically play more of the tankier heavy cruisers, or like the really big heavy cruisers. Well, not quite like, a Gear and stuff like that, but I enjoy my Omni, I enjoy my Hindenburg, I enjoy, heavy cruisers. And Marseille, which is, well, that's pretty much a battle cruise, but I like big boats, and I cannot lie. So that's where I'm coming from. I started out the game as a battleship main. I'm getting more into cruisers. I like gunboat destroyers right now. It's like the Calvados, the Kleber, DDs like that. That's what I do enjoy playing. But started the game as a BB main. I like the Germans a lot. GK is one of my favorite ships in the game, so that's where I'm coming from. I do have a very in-depth understanding of the secondary mechanics. I don't know how much Robert has, but I have quite a bit of experience with them. So let's talk about secondaries, alright? How do secondaries work? I'm so glad you asked. Well, secondaries are controlled by AI gunners. They, well, will shoot at anything in your secondary range until you tell them to stop. You tell them to stop by either pressing P, which turns them and your AA guns off, or you tell them to shoot at a particular target by hitting Control and hovering your mouse over something in your secondary range, or even outside your secondary range, and clicking on that. If that ship comes within your secondary range, the AI gunners will attempt to shoot that until it either leaves their firing arcs or it is destroyed. If you don't tell them to shoot anything, they'll just shoot whatever's in their firing arcs that enters into your secondary range. Now, you can improve their performance by doing a couple of things. You have, well, of course, if we're talking about battleships, because they are the only ones that have any, like, real secondary skills, you've got 3 main secondary skills that you will see taken with secondary builds most often. And that is long-range secondary battery shells, that's a 3-point skill. Manual secondary battery aiming, that's a 4-point skill. And then you have IFHE, which on battleships, like 99% of the time, that is used for secondaries. So right there, that is a 2-point skill, a 3-point skill, and then a 4-point skill that are typically used with most secondary builds. Depending upon what ship it is, you may or may not take IFHE. But you are giving up a 3-point skill and a 4-point skill at a minimum to get a secondary build. And of course, you're going to want to take things like Adrenaline Rush to help out the secondaries, because of course the more damage your ship takes, that'll lower your main battery guns reload time along with your secondary guns as well. So on top of that, typically you also want to take modules to improve your secondary skills. So you want to take Auxiliary Armaments Mod 1, which increases the secondary battery survivability by 100%. You also want to take Secondary Battery Mod 1, that is in the 3rd upgrade slot, which will decrease your secondary battery dispersion by 20% and increase the range by 20%. And then you're also going to want to take Auxiliary Armaments Mod 2. That is in the last upgrade slot, and that gives the secondaries a buff of 20% to their reload time. So that is typically what you are going to take when you do a full secondary build. Some combination of those skills. Depending on the ship, you may or may not need to take IFHE, so that does free up a 2-point slot for you. And even then, once you have all these skills and modules on your ship, you don't just get the secondary accuracy bonus. It builds up over 45 seconds. Before the commander rework, you would just instantaneously get this insane bonus to your secondary accuracy, but now it has to build up. And 99% of most DD players understand this and know that, hey, even if I get caught in the ship's secondary range, I've got about 40 seconds to get out of here until it really starts to hurt me. So most of them will simply just, disengage from the battleship, run away, and by the time they get out of the secondary range, maybe 20 seconds have passed, if that, unless they get caught like right up against the battleship, and at that point, usually they just torp the thing. So Yeah, it's not like you just get this bonus and now you have laser accurate secondaries like you used to. That's a thing of the past. So you have to give up, again, a 3-point commander slot and a 4-point commander slot to get a secondary build, a minimum secondary build at least. So what are you giving up for that? Well, with battleships, you're giving up typically either fire prevention or concealment expert. You're taking one of those two instead of those two. Most battleships will run a standard tank build, which consists of Concealment Expert and Fire Prevention. Concealment Expert is important because it gets your detection range down by 10%. Battleships typically have massive detection ranges, and getting that down by 10% is a pretty big buff to your survivability, because you can dictate the terms of your engagement that much more, meaning that you can run away easier because you have, let's say, a 12.5 detection range instead of a 14 kilometer detection range. And you typically would also take Fire Prevention Expert. This reduces the number of fires on your ship by 1, which is a huge thing. If you've never seen a ship on fire in 4 places, it is terrifying to witness. They are losing a lot of HP every second those 4 fires are ticking, and plus it reduces your chance of catching fire by 10%. So you're giving that up. You're also typically giving up usually basics of survivability, because you have to take long-range secondary battery shells. That's the 3-point skill. And basics of survivability gets your flooding and fire time down by 15%. Which, again, that's not an insignificant amount of time. So you're giving that up in order to increase what's called your passive damage income. Because, yeah, you don't have to aim your secondary guns. You passively earn damage from them. I will give them that. It is something that you as a player don't have to manually shoot your secondary guns. The AI does that for you. So, yes, but you have to build into them. And just in the commander build alone, you can see that you give up quite a bit of survivability there. And battleships are big, huge targets that everyone wants to hit with their guns because they're damage pinatas, you know? So you're giving up some of the most important survivability skills to increase that passive damage income. And that's even if you don't have to take IFHE. If you take IFHE, you have to give up a 2-point skill. So something like Grease the Gears, which increases your main battery traverse speed, or something like Priority Target, Brisk, or Vigilance. So, yeah. Now, the modules are where you're giving up main gun performance. Why? Because, well, if you take Auxiliary Armaments Mod 1, you are not taking Main Armaments Mod 1, something that most Battleship players run, which reduces the chance of your main guns, your big, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20-inch guns, from getting knocked out by 20%. You're not taking that because you're taking Auxiliary Armaments Mod 1. Why would you take Auxiliary Armaments Mod 1? Great question. Because it increases your secondary battery survivability by 100%. If you are dumping those commander skills into your secondary guns and giving up those survivability skills, you want your secondary battery to live. If it gets knocked out, you've basically thrown away those secondary skills for that match. That's something we talked about in my West Virginia 44 review, because the West Virginia 44 has all 4 of your secondary turrets right on top of each other, in a place where lots of cruisers and battleships are going to be aiming to chunk your superstructure. So they are going to be eating a lot of shells, meaning that those 4 secondary guns can be knocked out fairly easily, which means your secondary build's worthless now. So you don't want that to happen, so you got to take this module. Then you also want to take Secondary Battery Mod 1, and you're giving up Aiming Systems Mod 1, which decreases your maximum battery dispersion by 7%. You are giving up that increased accuracy to get a better reload and range on your secondary guns. And then, of course, in the last slot, you're giving up either Main Battery Mod 3, which reduces your main battery... Gunfire Control Systems Mod 2, which decreases your main battery... Oh my god, I am just not reading this correctly. I'm sorry, it is Main Battery Mod 3 that you are taking. I'm on a fitting tool instead of in-game because my computer sounds like a jet taking off if I hop in-game, so it's a little confusing because it's a little bit different setup with HUD. But anyway, you're not taking Main Battery Mod 3, which reduces your reload time by 12%. So you are straight up giving up DPM from your main guns, your big guns, to increase your secondary DPM. And keep in mind, too, that your main guns have a lot more range than your secondary guns. You don't have to get within secondary range for your main guns to work. Typically secondary range is usually at least, 8 to 10 kilometers more than your secondary gun range. So you're giving up main gun performance, and you're giving up survivability in order to push your secondaries out to their maximum range. So you're giving up quite a bit for that, especially in today's meta. Now, that's what you're giving up and what you have to do to get your secondaries out to their maximum. What is their maximum? Well, the maximum range is 12.5 kilometers if we're not talking about super ships. For like the GK, 12.5 kilometers. Let's think about that. On a tier 10 ship, 12.5 kilometers, it's a pretty close range. Now, high tier, of course, is pretty passive in today's World of Warships. So, typically, you won't really get into those 12.5 kilometer engagements until mid to late game. Typically, when either the enemy team has fallen and you can kind of push forward and break through their side of the map, or your side's fallen and now you're running away and kiting the enemy to come into your into your secondary battery range. So typically, for the first 10 minutes of the game, you're not really doing much of those secondary battery guns. Or you have to get in a situation to where you can use those secondary battery guns, which means you have to push into their range. Now, of course, when you are pushing, you have to be aware of your positioning. You have to be aware of where the enemy ships are at, especially if there's something like a shimakaze or a submarine on the enemy side. You have to know, at least generally, where those ships are at, because when you're pushing, you're going to the enemy. You don't want to be surprised to where, now there's a Gato on my side. Oh, there's a shimakaze over there. There's a wall of torpedoes there. I'm kind of dead because I had to push up. It's a very dangerous thing to do, especially in most higher tier games today. And you have to be aware of your surroundings. Now, do keep in mind, too, that when you are finally able to get into secondary gun range and able to get them off, depending upon what ship you're in, there's a good chance that they might be pretty darn effective at dealing with the ship, or they might be not that great, depending upon what secondary guns you have and what you can and can't pin. So you have to be aware of what ships you're targeting and, again, what's around you. So let's say you're in Massachusetts, 127s, Glorious American 127s. Can only pin 21 millimeters of armor. So if you're pushing and there's battleships all around you, the secondaries can't really do too much to them, except maybe start the occasional fire. More than the occasional fire, but starting fire is really the only thing that those secondaries can do because of their poor pins. Now the Germans, they can pin a bit more than that, but again, that depends upon what you are targeting. And of course, too, you have the simple fact that ships can simply leave your secondary range. Like, most DD players will not open up with their guns from within secondary range. Why? Because they understand they are going to be shot at by the enemy ship's secondaries if they fire on them from within their secondary range. They would typically rack the guns, go dark, and throw torpedoes at the ship. It seems to work most of the times. Of course, German ships have Hydro as well in order to counter that, but yeah. So that's my argument. You got to give up a lot to build into them. You still have to be very aware of your surroundings when you're pushing. You of course have to angle because, it's a very fine balance between getting all those secondary guns off and then, that is still a battleship I'm engaging. If I'm trying to get too many of my secondary guns off and they just chunk me for 20k, that's neat that I got, 10k on damage to with my secondaries, but because I was trying to get all my secondaries off, there goes 20k of my HP. It's a lot more than just smacking W and watching the secondaries go to town. So, a good measurement for this is average damage. If the secondaries are truly as OP as Robert is suggesting here, surely the average damage of some of the best secondary ships in the game should be quite high. Right? I mean, they should, if they're that easy to just murder things with. Or the average kills, of course, should be incredibly high, because if they're that good at murdering things, surely it should be quite high. Let's take a look at the stats page for NA. Would you look at that? It's not really the case, is it? So, secondary ships. The best ones. GK, Preußen, and Schlieffen. Way down there. GK has an average damage of 75,150. Okay. Schlieffen. Keep in mind, Schlieffen, again, has like 30-something secondary guns per side. She has 80,572 average damage. Alright. Top of the list. Burgon. Average damage 107,000. That ain't from the secondaries. That's from the main guns. Burgon got some sweet guns. Slava too. 102,000 damage. Shikishima, 102,000 damage. Again, 20-inch guns with battlecruiser accuracy. Mecklenburg, 101,000 damage. Yes, Mecklenburg does have German secondaries, but I'm like 90% sure that is from the main guns because they're 305mm German guns with German AP, and they are quite accurate. Conqueror, St. Vincent, Thunderer, these are all main battery gun ships. Ohio, 93,000. You could maybe say that's something, you know, that's some of that secondary action there because it does have the American 127s, but I'm pretty sure it's from the very accurate American 457mm main battery guns. Incomparable, again, 20-inch gun ship. Republic, glorious 17-inch French guns with a 20-second reload. Louisiana, it's half of a CV. You guys get what I'm saying here, alright? So, like, the secondary ships aren't exactly topping the charts. Schlieffen's still relatively new. If it was overperformed by that much, it should be way up there at the top. She has under 1 million battles played still in North America. So her results, if anything, should be skewed to the top. But they aren't. And if you want to look at these secondary ships too, they give up a lot of stuff for their secondaries. Okay? Like Schlieffen. Schlieffen has just insane DPM output from its secondaries. It's got the torpedoes. It's got the 16-inch guns. But guess what it doesn't have? Armor. It does not have armor, alright? Like, the ship is incredibly squishy. She doesn't even have 32mm plating on her bow and her stern. She can get pinned by most cruisers at tier 8 plus because she doesn't have 32mm plating. And they don't even have to worry about taking IFHE to pin her. Like, she's incredibly easy to melt. Like a Kitakaze in smoke, or a Harugumo in smoke, or really anything that's HE spammy in smoke that's outside of her Hydro range can melt her down. Alright? GK. Yes, GK has a lot of secondaries, but, like, God, her torpedo protection is terrible. She has a turning radius of Pangea. Her main battery turret angles are atrocious. She's so easy to farm because of her massive superstructure. Her main battery guns aren't even that accurate. I mean, even after they got buffed, they're still not that accurate. They just kind of all fall in the same area a little bit more than before. So, Massachusetts 1.7 Sigma instead of the higher Sigma of the American battleships. And again, her guns can't even pin 22mm of armor. They pin 21, 26 with IFHE if you take that, but then you cut your fire chance down on your 16-inch guns, which isn't great because you're a tier 8, you fight tier 10 ships, and, you know, sometimes they go bow into you. You can't overmatch them with 16-inch guns. So, yeah. There's a bit more to it than what's being presented here in Robert's arguments, in my opinion, but that is my opinion. That is my argument, and I rest my case in this manner, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. So, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Hope you all have a wonderful Tuesday, wonderful 4th of July, fellas, my fellow Americans. Hope you guys have a great rest of your week. I hope to catch you guys in the next one.